Captain Jake Morrison sat in his command chair aboard the exploration vessel Earth's Promise, staring at the strange message that had appeared on his screens 3 hours ago. The ship floated in the empty space between star systems, far from any human colony. They had been mapping new trade routes when the communication arrived from nowhere. The message came with perfect translation software and introduced itself as a greeting from something called the Galactic Council. Jake had read it 12 times already, but the words still seemed impossible. 847 different alien species working together, in peace for 50,000 years. They wanted to meet humanity and invite them to join their cosmic community. Dr. Lisa Grant walked onto the bridge, carrying her datapad and looking excited. She was the ship's expert on alien life, though, until today that had been mostly theory and guesswork. Her brown hair was messy from hours of work, and her eyes were bright with curiosity. "Captain, I've been studying their species database all morning," Lisa said. "The diversity is incredible. Some breathe methane, others live in pure energy fields. There are silicon-based life forms and creatures that exist partially in other dimensions. This changes everything we thought we knew about life in the universe." Jake nodded, but his expression remained serious. "What do you make of their ambassador, the Zefkari character?" Lisa pulled up the holographic image that had come with the message. The alien looked somewhat like a tall, thin human, but with blue-gray skin and large black eyes. Its limbs were longer than human proportions, and it had no visible hair. When it spoke in the recording, its voice was calm and welcoming. "The Veltoran species appears to be peaceful," Lisa said. "Their biology suggests they evolved from herbivorous creatures. No natural weapons, no aggressive features. They seem genuinely friendly." Commander Alex Harper entered the bridge at that moment. He was head of security and had been analyzing the technical aspects of the alien communication. His face showed concern as he approached the captain's chair. "Sir, we need to talk about how this message reached us," Alex said quietly. "I've run every scan possible. There are no alien ships in this sector, no relay stations, nothing that could have transmitted this signal. Yet somehow they knew exactly where to find us and how to reach our communication systems." Jake felt a chill run down his spine. "Are you saying they've been watching us?" "I'm saying they know more about us than they're letting on," Alex replied. "I've also detected some anomalies in the ambassador's biometric readings during the recording. Stress markers that don't match his calm words. He's afraid of something, but trying not to show it." Dr. Grant frowned. "Afraid of what?" "We're just one species among hundreds in their council. What could possibly worry them about us?" Alex pulled up his analysis on the main screen. "Look at these energy signatures embedded in their message. There are secondary transmissions, heavily encrypted, being sent to multiple locations as soon as we receive their greeting. They're not just talking to us. They're reporting to someone else about making contact." The bridge fell quiet as the crew absorbed this information. Jake had been a space captain for 15 years, and his instincts were telling him that something was not right about this first contact scenario. Everything seemed too perfect, too welcoming, too convenient. "Captain," said Lieutenant Karen Walsh from the communications station, "I'm detecting another transmission. It's using the same alien technology, but it's not directed at us. It appears to be a message sent from this sector to the galactic core region." Alex moved to her station and worked with the translation software. After several minutes, he managed to decode part of the message. His face went pale as he read the partial translation. It says, "Contact established with Terran vessel. Proceeding with evaluation protocol. Recommend immediate alert status for all border worlds. Species shows expected characteristics consistent with previous Death World emergence patterns." Lisa looked confused. Death world emergence patterns? What does that mean? Jake stood up from his command chair. His years of military training had taught him to trust his instincts, and right now every instinct was screaming danger. It means they've been expecting us and not in a good way. Alex, how long would it take us to return to human space? 3 days at maximum speed, sir. Dr. Grant, I want you to prepare a full analysis of everything they've sent us. Look for any information about these death world patterns they mentioned. Commander Harper, I want all defensive systems checked and ready. We're going to accept their invitation to meet, but we're going to be very careful about it. Jake looked out at the stars through the bridge windows. Humanity had always wondered if they were alone in the universe. Now they had their answer, but it came with questions that worried him deeply. Why would a peaceful galactic council be afraid of making contact with humans? What did they know about humanity that humans themselves didn't understand? The Earth's promise turned toward the coordinates provided by the Galactic Council, carrying its crew toward a meeting that would change the course of human history. Behind them, hidden monitoring stations belonging to a dozen different alien species began transmitting urgent reports about the human ship's movement toward Council space. The galaxy was about to discover why some species were feared above all others. Council Station Harmony was the largest artificial structure humanity had ever seen. The massive space station stretched for hundreds of kilometers in all directions, with gleaming towers and docking bays that could hold entire fleets. Ships from dozens of different species moved around it like insects around a hive, each one unique in design and purpose. Senator Claire Adams stood at the observation deck of the human diplomatic shuttle, watching the station grow larger as they approached. She had been chosen to lead humanity's first official delegation to the Galactic Council, and the weight of that responsibility pressed down on her shoulders. Behind her stood Colonel Ryan Brooks, a career military officer who had volunteered for this mission despite having no idea what they might face. Dr. Peter Collins, their cultural expert, was busy taking notes and recordings of everything he could see. Look at the size of it, Colonel Brooks said quietly. How many beings do you think live on that station? Dr. Collins consulted his data pad. According to the information they provided, approximately 2 million permanent residents from over 300 different species. It's essentially a small city designed to accommodate every possible form of life. Their shuttle docked at a bay specifically prepared for human atmosphere and gravity requirements. As they stepped out, they were greeted by Ambassador Zethkari, the same Velteran who had made first contact with Captain Morrison's ship. Up close, the alien was even more impressive, standing nearly 8 feet tall with graceful movements that seemed almost like a dance. "Welcome to Harmony Station," Zethkari said through his translation device. "We are honored to receive humanity's representatives. I hope your journey was comfortable." Senator Adams smiled diplomatically. "Thank you for your hospitality, Ambassador. We're eager to learn about your council and how humanity might contribute to galactic peace." As they walked through the station's corridors, Dr. Collins noticed something strange. While many different species moved through the hallways, most of them seemed to give the human delegation a wide berth. Some would stop and stare. Others would quickly change direction to avoid coming too close. A few smaller species actually moved to the opposite side of the corridor entirely. "Ambassador," Dr. Collins said carefully, "are humans particularly unusual among council species?" Zethkari paused for a moment before answering. "Every species brings unique qualities to our community. Humans are certainly distinctive in many ways." They entered a vast ceremonial hall where hundreds of alien beings had gathered for the welcoming ceremony. Senator Adams had studied the species files, but seeing them in person was overwhelming. Insectoid creatures with multiple arms and compound eyes stood near crystalline beings that seemed to be made of living gemstones. Energy-based life forms flickered in special containment fields while aquatic species moved through tubes filled with their native fluids. Elder Silphara, the ancient leader of the council, approached the human delegation. She was a Keftari, a species that looked somewhat like a cross between a bird and a reptile, with silver scales and piercing golden eyes. Dr. Collins had read that she was over 3,000 years old and had seen the rise and fall of countless civilizations. "Humans of Earth," Elder Silphara said in a voice that seemed to echo with age and wisdom, "you stand now among the greatest gathering of intelligent life in the known galaxy. We hope that your species will find wisdom and peace among us." The ceremony proceeded with formal introductions to various species representatives. Senator Adams noticed that while everyone was polite, there was an underlying tension in the air. Conversation seemed forced, and she caught several alien delegates whispering to each other while looking in the human direction. Colonel Brooks had been trained to notice tactical situations, and his military instincts were picking up troubling details. Many of the aliens positioned themselves with clear paths to exits when humans were nearby. Security forces, identifiable by their equipment despite being from different species, seemed unusually alert and numerous for what was supposed to be a peaceful diplomatic gathering. During a break in the ceremony, Dr. Collins was granted access to the Council's cultural archives. He was fascinated by the historical records of how different species had joined the Council over the millennia. Most entries were straightforward accounts of peaceful contact and gradual integration. However, he began to notice gaps in the historical record and references to files that were marked as restricted or corrupted. One entry caught his attention. It mentioned something called the Death Worlder Incident and referenced species classification, extreme hazard protocols. When he asked the Arenthi librarian about these entries, the scholarly alien became visibly nervous. "Those records concern extinct species," the librarian said quickly. "The files were damaged in a data storage accident many cycles ago. Nothing of importance to current council operations." Dr. Collins didn't believe that explanation, but he didn't want to push too hard on their first day. Instead, he made note of the file references and planned to investigate further when he had more access to the archives. The day took a dramatic turn when an accident occurred in the station's hydroponics bay. A massive support beam had collapsed, trapping several council workers in a section that was rapidly filling with toxic gas from damaged environmental systems. The alien rescue teams declared the situation too dangerous to attempt a rescue, as the gas would kill most known species within minutes. Steve Parker, a human technician who had come with a diplomatic mission to help with equipment compatibility, heard about the emergency and immediately ran toward the hydroponics bay. Without hesitation, he grabbed an emergency breathing mask and plunged into the toxic environment. Colonel Brooks and two other humans followed him, working together to pull out 6 trapped aliens, who would have died without immediate help. What shocked the alien observers was not just that the humans had survived in the lethal environment, but that they had done so without seeming to consider it particularly dangerous. Steve Parker emerged from the toxic gas coughing but otherwise unharmed, asking if everyone was okay and whether they needed to go back for any equipment. The rescued aliens were from different species, but they all stared at their human rescuers with a mixture of gratitude and something that looked very much like fear. Word of the incident spread through the station within hours, accompanied by whispered conversations about human capabilities that no one had expected. That evening, Elder Silphara called an emergency session of the Council's inner leadership. The meeting was classified, but Dr. Collins' newly installed monitoring equipment picked up fragments of the discussion. The words he could make out were troubling. Greater threat than projected, Death Worlder characteristics confirmed, and Containment protocols may be insufficient. Senator Adams went to sleep that night in their assigned quarters, wondering what humanity had gotten itself into and why their hosts seemed more afraid of them than welcoming. Dr. Monica Lee had always been fascinated by history, but the archives of the Galactic Council contained more history than she had ever imagined possible. The elderly Aranthi librarian Cassandra had taken a liking to the human historian and had begun showing her deeper sections of the vast digital library that contained 50,000 years of galactic civilization. "Your species has an interesting approach to learning," Cassandra said as her four arms worked at different control panels simultaneously. "Most species focus on their own history and perhaps that of their immediate neighbors. Humans seem to want to understand everything." Dr. Lee smiled as she navigated through files about ancient wars, forgotten civilizations, and the gradual expansion of the Council across the galaxy. "We've always believed that understanding the past helps us avoid repeating mistakes. Your Council has achieved something remarkable, 50,000 years of peace." Cassandra's large, multifaceted eyes dimmed slightly. "Peace, yes, but perhaps not in the way your species might define it. Come, there is something I believe you should see, though I risk much by showing you." The librarian led Dr. Lee deeper into the archives through sections that required special authorization codes. The files here were older, more detailed, and marked with warning symbols that Monica didn't recognize. Cassandra opened a file labeled Deathworld Species Analysis, Historical Perspective. What Dr. Lee saw made her blood run cold. The file contained detailed biological and psychological profiles of humanity that were more complete than anything Earth's own scientists had produced. There were analyses of human evolution, brain chemistry, survival instincts, technological development patterns, and social structures. But most disturbing were the comparisons to other species classified as Death World emergent. "What is a Death World?" Dr. Lee asked quietly. Cassandra pulled up a planetary classification system. Worlds are rated on a scale of 1 to 20, based on how hostile they are to the development of intelligent life. Most Council species evolved on Class 1 to 3 worlds, stable climates, abundant resources, few natural predators. Earth rates as a Class 12 death world. The file explained that Class 12 worlds were characterized by extreme weather patterns, aggressive predator species, frequent natural disasters, resource scarcity, and environmental conditions that changed rapidly enough to drive evolution at an accelerated pace. Only 4 species in galactic history had ever emerged from Class 12 worlds to achieve space travel. What happened to the other 3 Death World species? Dr. Lee asked, though she was beginning to suspect the answer. Cassandra brought up historical records that painted a disturbing picture. The first Death World species, the Cartheni, had joined the Council 12,000 years ago. They were peaceful and grateful for the opportunity to join galactic civilization. Within 200 years, they had revolutionized Council technology, solved several major resource crises, and been granted leadership positions in multiple sectors. Within 500 years, they controlled over 30% of Council space, and were making demands for changes to fundamental Council laws. The file ended with a brief note: Cartheni species extinct, stellar collision with homeworld, no survivors found. The second and third Death World species had similar histories. Each had started as grateful newcomers, quickly become invaluable problem solvers, then grown too powerful and influential for the Council's comfort. All 3 had met with unfortunate accidents that eliminated their entire species. Dr. Lee felt sick as she read the files. They were murdered. The Council killed them all. Not murdered, Cassandra said sadly, contained. Each of these species displayed the same patterns your people are showing: rapid adaptation, fearless problem-solving, pack loyalty that extends across genetic lines, and most dangerous of all, the inability to recognize impossible situations. Meanwhile, on the human colony of New Texas, settler Ben Hughes was having a very good day. His experimental livestock program was showing excellent results, and the modified crops were producing better yields than anyone had expected. The secret was understanding that what most species considered dangerous could be useful if approached correctly. Ben's livestock were actually predators from the local ecosystem that he had learned to domesticate through patience and understanding of their behavioral patterns. The creatures were highly aggressive and toxic to most life forms, but they produced a protein-rich milk substitute, and their hide made excellent protective clothing. His crops were grown from plants that were poisonous to most species but could be made nutritious through proper processing. What Ben didn't know was that hidden observation posts operated by 3 different council species were monitoring his colony. The reports they filed described his activities in terms that would have alarmed him. Subjects continued to demonstrate impossible biological adaptation rates. Standard toxic compounds processed as nutritional supplements, predator species, successfully integrated into food production cycle through methods that should have resulted in colony extinction. Back on Council Station Harmony, Commander Tracy Nelson was beginning to understand that the humans were not exactly guests. As head of security for the human delegation, she had been granted limited access to station security systems to help protect her people. What she found in those systems made her realize they were actually prisoners. The human quarters were equipped with atmospheric controls that could be modified to introduce various gas mixtures at a moment's notice. The corridors leading to human areas had hidden force field generators that could create impassable barriers. Most disturbing of all, the station's security records showed detailed behavioral analysis of every human on board, with particular attention to their reactions to stress and potential combat capabilities. Tracy brought her concerns to Senator Adams during their daily briefing. "Ma'am, I think we need to seriously consider the possibility that this diplomatic mission is actually some kind of evaluation process. We're not being treated like honored guests. We're being studied like dangerous animals." Senator Adams had been having similar concerns. The questions asked during cultural exchange sessions seemed designed to probe human psychology and social structures rather than build genuine understanding. Many of the council representatives seemed more interested in learning about human weaknesses than human strengths. Dr. Collins made the most disturbing discovery while reviewing historical records that Cassandra had helped him access. He found footage from humanity's first contact with the council, showing emergency meetings held immediately after Captain Morrison's ship had accepted the invitation to make contact. The footage showed council leaders in heated debate about whether to proceed with contact or implement what they called preemptive containment protocols. Elder Silthara had argued for giving humanity a chance, but other council members had wanted to take action before humans could spread beyond their current territory. "They have all the characteristics," one council member had said in the recording. "Death world evolution, pack bonding behavior, rapid technological advancement, and the genetic markers we've learned to recognize. If we wait too long, they'll become too powerful to contain." Dr. Collins realized with growing horror that humanity was essentially on trial. The council wasn't evaluating whether humans would be good members of galactic civilization. They were determining whether humanity should be allowed to continue existing at all. That night, Dr. Lee sent an encrypted message back to Earth through channels she hoped the council wasn't monitoring. Her message was simple but urgent. "We are not the first Death World species to make contact with the council, and the others are all extinct. Humanity may be in more danger than we realized. We need to be prepared for the possibility that this Diplomatic mission could be the last chance our species gets to prove we deserve to survive. Lieutenant Commander Kate Sullivan received the emergency call while her ship was docked at a Council refueling station 3 days from Harmony Station. The planet Thermios was experiencing catastrophic volcanic activity that had trapped thousands of the crystalline Thermiac people in underground caverns. The Council's rescue teams had attempted to reach the survivors, but had been forced to retreat due to toxic gases and unstable terrain. Kate's ship, the Hughes Mercy, was primarily a humanitarian vessel equipped for disaster relief operations. Her crew of 43 humans had volunteered for the mission despite warnings from Council officials that the situation was beyond hope. The Thermiac people would die within days if not rescued, but every rescue attempt so far had ended in failure. Dr. Eric Miller, the ship's geologist, studied the planetary scans as they approached Thermios. The volcanic activity is unlike anything in our databases, he told Kate. The gases being released would kill most known species within minutes, and the ground temperature in the affected areas is over 300 degrees. The Council teams tried using remote drones, but the electromagnetic interference from the volcanic activity destroyed them. Marine Sergeant Lucy Rivera was checking equipment in the cargo bay when she overheard the conversation. "Ma'am, with respect, when has impossible terrain ever stopped humans before? My unit specialized in hostile environment rescue operations. This isn't that different from some of the missions we ran on Mars." Kate looked at the data again. The conditions were indeed lethal by most species standards, but humans had evolved to survive in hostile environments. Their biological adaptability and technological problem-solving abilities had helped them colonize worlds that other species considered uninhabitable. When the Mercy arrived at Thermios, the planet was a nightmare of fire and smoke, massive volcanic eruptions had created a landscape that looked like something from the deepest levels of hell. The Council Rescue Coordinator, a tall insectoid being named Clicktar, met with Kate via communication link from his ship in high orbit. "Commander Sullivan, I must advise against any rescue attempt," Clicktar said, his translation device conveying obvious distress. "We have lost 3 rescue teams already. The environment is simply too hostile for any known life form to survive." Kate studied the sensor readings one more time. "Clicktar, I appreciate your concern, but my people have experience operating in extreme environments. We'd like permission to attempt what your teams couldn't accomplish." There was a long pause before Clicktar responded. "I cannot in good conscience authorize such a mission, but I will not prevent you from trying. Please understand that the Council cannot be held responsible for what happens to your crew." Dr. Miller and Sergeant Rivera worked together to modify their environmental suits for the specific conditions they would face. The suits were designed to handle extreme temperatures, filter toxic gases, and provide protection against radiation. More importantly, they were built to be maintained and repaired in the field by humans who understood that equipment failure in hostile environments was usually a temporary problem, not a mission-ending catastrophe. The rescue mission began with Kate leading a team of 12 humans into the volcanic hellscape. They moved through terrain that would have been instantly fatal to most Council species, treating the lethal environment as simply another challenging work site. Their approach to the rescue was methodical but fearless. They identified problems, developed solutions, and implemented fixes without spending time worrying about whether their solutions were theoretically possible. When their first set of breathing filters became clogged with volcanic ash, they improvised new ones using materials from their emergency supplies. When the ground temperature threatened to melt their equipment, they developed cooling systems using principles that Dr. Miller had learned from studying desert survival techniques. When toxic gas concentrations spiked beyond their suits' filtering capacity, They simply held their breath and worked faster. The Thermiac people they found in the underground caverns were unlike any aliens the humans had encountered before. They were living crystalline beings who communicated through light, patterns, and harmonic resonances. Despite the language barrier, the humans quickly established that the Thermiac were grateful for the rescue attempt and desperately wanted to survive. Sergeant Rivera organized the evacuation with military efficiency, but what impressed the Thermiac most was how the humans worked together. When one human's equipment failed, others immediately shared their resources. When someone became exhausted from the extreme conditions, teammates took over their tasks without being asked. The humans treated the rescue not as a heroic mission, but as a job that needed to be done. Over the next 18 hours, Kate's team evacuated over 8,000 Thermiac people from the disaster zone. They worked in shifts, with some humans resting while others continued the rescue operations. The conditions that had forced Council rescue teams to retreat became simply environmental factors that needed to be managed and overcome. What the Council observers found most disturbing was how matter-of-fact the humans were about the entire operation. When asked about the extreme danger they had faced, Kate simply replied, "The environment was challenging, but we've dealt with worse. The important thing is that we got everyone out safely." Meanwhile, on Earth, anthropologist Dr. Gary Watson was contacted by an unexpected visitor. The being identified itself as Silphic, a member of the moth-like Silwandri species, and claimed to be a defecting Council intelligence operative. Silphic had risked everything to warn humanity about what the Council was really planning. "Your species is being evaluated for extinction," Silphic told Dr. Watson during their secret meeting in an abandoned research facility. "The Council has identified humans as possessing every characteristic they use to identify potential galaxy-threatening species. Your people don't realize it, but you have demonstrated capabilities that terrify civilizations that have known only peace for 50,000 years." Dr. Watson listened with growing alarm as Silphic explained the Council's perspective. Humans were adaptable beyond anything the Council had seen, capable of thriving in environments that would kill other species instantly. More frightening to the Council was humanity's pack-bonding behavior, their willingness to sacrifice for others, including complete strangers and even other species. "Most Council species will retreat from impossible situations," Silphic continued. "Humans seem incapable of recognizing that some problems cannot be solved. You treat every obstacle as a temporary inconvenience rather than an insurmountable barrier. This makes you incredibly valuable, but also incredibly dangerous." The defector explained that the Council had been monitoring human space for decades, studying human colonies and military operations. Every report had confirmed their worst fears about Deathworld species. Humans routinely accomplished things that Council scientists had proven were impossible, simply because no one had told the humans that they couldn't be done. Across the galaxy, Merchant Captain Doug Harris was beginning to understand that his cargo runs were being monitored and controlled. His ship, the Liberty Bell, had been making regular supply runs between human colonies when he noticed that certain shipping routes had become mysteriously unavailable. When he tried to file new route applications, they were delayed or denied for reasons that made no sense. Doug's navigation officer, Jenny Walsh, discovered that their ship was being shadowed by unmarked vessels that appeared on long-range sensors, but disappeared when they tried to get closer looks. Their cargo manifests were being inspected more frequently than normal, and they were being directed away from certain sectors without explanation. "Captain, I think we're being herded," Jenny told Doug during their weekly staff meeting. "Someone is controlling where we can and can't go, but they're being subtle about it. It's like they're keeping us contained within human space without actually telling us we're contained." Doug realized that the Liberty Bell and probably every other human ship were being quietly quarantined. The Council was keeping humanity isolated, while they decided what to do about the Deathworld species that had appeared in their carefully ordered galaxy back on Thermios. The rescue operation was winding down with complete success. Every Thermiac who could be found had been evacuated safely, and the human rescue teams were preparing to return to their ship. Kliktar, the Council rescue coordinator, had watched the entire operation with growing amazement and horror. "How? Did they do it?" he asked his tactical officer. "The environmental conditions should have killed them within the first hour. Instead, they worked for 18 straight hours in conditions that defeated our best equipment and most experienced teams." The tactical officer, a reptilian being from the Saurian Alliance, consulted his analysis reports. "Sir, the humans appear to treat lethal environments as merely challenging work conditions. They don't seem to recognize the difference between difficult and impossible. From their perspective, the rescue was simply a job that needed to be done, regardless of personal risk." Kliktar filed his report to the Council with trembling appendages. The humans had accomplished something that should have been impossible. The attack came without warning at 0347 station time, when most of the human delegation was asleep in their quarters. Security Captain Helen Price was on duty in the Human Sector's command center when alarms began screaming throughout Council. Station Harmony. Her screen showed explosions in multiple sections of the station and armed figures moving through corridors that should have been restricted to diplomatic personnel. "All human security teams, this is Price," she broadcast on their encrypted channel. "We are under attack by unknown forces. Protect the delegation and prepare for hostile contact." The attackers were led by a scarred Keftari warrior named Vashtar, who had lost his homeworld to what he believed was Council weakness in dealing with dangerous species. His followers came from a dozen different races, all united by the belief that humanity represented an existential threat to galactic civilization that had to be eliminated before it was too late. Ambassador Tony Martinez was awakened by the sound of explosions and immediately tried to contact the Council leadership. His communication systems had been jammed, but he could hear weapons fire getting closer to the human quarters. Despite the obvious danger, his first concern was for the Council representatives who had taken shelter in the human diplomatic compound. When the attack began, "Helen, we have civilians from at least 6 different species in the main conference room," Tony told Captain Price over their internal communications. "They came here because they thought our security systems were more reliable than the standard station defenses." Captain Price looked at her tactical display with growing concern. Her security team consisted of only 18 humans armed with standard diplomatic protection weapons. They were facing an unknown number of attackers with military-grade equipment, who had already demonstrated they were willing to kill anyone who got in their way. "Sir, I have to be honest with you," Helen said. "We're not equipped for this kind of fight. Our weapons are designed for personal protection, not military combat. We're outnumbered and outgunned." Tony Martinez had been a diplomat for 20 years, but he had also served in the military before joining the Foreign Service. He understood the tactical situation, but he also understood something more important. Retreat was not an option when innocent lives were at stake. "Captain, we do what we can with what we have," Tony said calmly. "Those people trusted us enough to come here for protection. We don't abandon people who need our help." Helen smiled grimly as she checked her weapons and equipment. "Understood, sir. We'll hold them off as long as possible." The battle for the human diplomatic compound became a masterclass in improvised defense tactics. Helen's security team used furniture, decorative panels, and even pieces of alien artwork to create defensive positions. When their ammunition ran low, they scavenged weapons from fallen attackers. When their equipment failed, They repaired it with spare parts cannibalized from station systems. Corporal Sam Jackson found himself defending the main entrance with a weapon he had never seen before and ammunition that wasn't designed for human use. The attacking forces had superior numbers and better equipment, but they had made the mistake of fighting humans who refused to accept that they were in an impossible situation. "Jackson, your position is about to be overrun," Helen called over. "The communication system. Fall back to secondary defensive positions." Sam looked at the advancing attackers and the frightened alien civilians behind him. "Negative, Captain. If I fall back, they'll have a clear shot at the civilians. I can hold them here a little longer." What Sam didn't realize was that his helmet camera was broadcasting his actions throughout the station's security network. Council. Personnel in safe areas watched as the human corporal single-handedly held off 12 attackers while providing covering fire for alien civilians to reach safety. When his position finally became untenable, Sam activated what he thought was a distress beacon but was actually a standard human emergency protocol. The signal that went out from Sam's beacon was simple, but carried implications that no one had anticipated. It translated roughly as "humans under attack, request immediate assistance," but embedded in the transmission were location coordinates, tactical assessments, and automated requests for backup that triggered responses throughout human space. The message reached merchant ships, exploration vessels, military patrols, and civilian craft across a dozen star systems. What happened next demonstrated something about humanity that even they didn't fully understand. When humans called for help, other humans came running, regardless of personal cost or official authorization. Captain Doug Harris received the distress signal while his cargo ship Liberty Bell was 3 days away from the nearest jump point to Council space. His cargo hold was full of valuable trade goods, and his ship was not equipped for combat. By all logical measures, he should have reported the situation to proper authorities and continued with his scheduled deliveries. Instead, Doug ordered his crew to jettison the cargo and plot the fastest possible course to Council Station Harmony. "Jenny, I need you to contact every human ship in communication range," he told his navigation officer. "Tell them what's happening and where we're going." Within 6 hours, an impromptu fleet of human vessels was converging on Council space. Merchant ships had been hastily armed with mining equipment and industrial tools converted into weapons. Science vessels carried research teams who had volunteered for combat duty despite having no military training. Even passenger liners had diverted from their scheduled routes to answer the call for help. The approaching human fleet sent the entire Council leadership into emergency session. Elder Silthara called for an immediate ceasefire and demanded that Vashtar's forces stand down, but the attack on the human compound continued. What terrified the Council most was not the size of the human response, but the speed and determination with which it had been organized. It came from everywhere. One Council observer reported military vessels, civilian craft, cargo ships, even personal transports. They abandoned their missions, their cargo, their scheduled activities, all to help people they had never met. This level of species-wide pack bonding has never been observed before. Back in the diplomatic compound, Ambassador Martinez continued his negotiations with moderate council leaders even as the battle raged around him. His calm professionalism in the face of mortal danger both impressed and unsettled the alien diplomats who had taken shelter with the humans. "Ambassador, how can you remain so focused while your people are fighting for their lives?" asked Counselor Athmira, a gaseous being who communicated through controlled chemical emissions. Tony paused his review of diplomatic protocols to consider the question. "Counselor, my security team is doing their job, which is to keep all of us safe. My job is to find a diplomatic solution to this crisis." We each do what we're trained for, and we trust each other to do it well. The tide of battle began to turn when Captain Price's team managed to capture several of the attackers' communication devices and use them to coordinate with Council security forces that were trying to reach the compound. The combination of human tactical flexibility and Council technological superiority proved devastating to Vashtar's forces. By the time the first human reinforcement ships arrived at the station, the immediate crisis was over. Vashtar had been captured, his followers were either dead or in custody, and the human diplomatic compound had become a refugee center for civilians from dozens of species who had been caught in the crossfire. Elder Silthara surveyed the aftermath of the attack with growing understanding and concern. The humans had not only survived an assault designed to eliminate them, but they had protected alien civilians at great personal risk and inspired a rescue response that demonstrated capabilities the Council had never imagined. They are everything we feared they would be, she told her advisors as they watched human rescue teams working alongside Council medical personnel to treat the wounded. But they are also something we never expected them to be. They are willing to die for people they barely know, including us. The crisis had ended, but Elder Silthara realized that the real test was just beginning. Humanity had proven they were dangerous, but they had also proven they were honorable. The question now was whether the galaxy was ready for a species that combined the survival instincts of apex predators with the moral compass of protectors. The Council chambers had never hosted a session quite like this one. For the first time in 50,000 years, representatives from every member species had gathered to address a crisis that threatened the very foundation of galactic civilization. Elder Silthara stood at the center of the vast circular hall, her ancient voice carrying clearly to every corner as she addressed both the Council and the human delegation. "We have called this session to speak truth," she began, her golden eyes focusing on Senator Adams and the human representatives. "For too long we have hidden behind diplomatic courtesy and pleasant fiction. The time has come for honesty, regardless of how painful that honesty might be." Senator Adams felt the weight of history pressing down on her shoulders. Around the chamber, hundreds of alien beings watched with expressions ranging from curiosity to fear to outright hostility. She knew that whatever was said in this room would determine whether humanity had a future among the stars or would face the same fate as the three Death World species that had come before them. Elder Silthara activated a holographic display that showed the development of galactic civilization over the past 50 millennia. "The Council has maintained peace through careful control of change," she explained. "We have avoided war by ensuring that no single species becomes powerful enough to threaten others. We have prevented chaos by establishing systems that reward predictability and discourage rapid adaptation." The display showed the rise and fall of various civilizations, with particular attention to the periods of stability that had followed the establishment of Council oversight. Dr. Collins recognized the pattern. Immediately, it was a carefully managed stagnation, designed to prevent any species from developing the power to challenge the established order. "Humanity represents something we have not seen for 12,000 years, Elder Silthara continued. "You are a Death World species, evolved under conditions that would kill most of us within hours. Your survival instincts, adaptive capabilities, and pack-bonding behaviors make you incredibly dangerous by our standards." Murmurs rippled through the chamber as various species representatives whispered among themselves. Some of the more militant species called for immediate action, while others argued for continued observation. The tension in the room was thick, enough to cut with a knife. General Patricia White, who had arrived as humanity's new military representative after the crisis, stood to address the Council. Her uniform bore the insignia of someone who had fought in conflicts across human space, but her voice was calm and measured as she spoke. "Elder Silthara, we acknowledge that humans are dangerous," she said. "We have never tried to hide that. Fact. We evolved on a world that tried to kill us every day, and that experience shaped us into survivors. But I would ask the Council to consider something important. Dangerous does not mean evil." She activated her own holographic display showing human history from early civilization through their expansion into space. Yes, we fight. Yes, we adapt rapidly to new challenges. Yes, we take risks that other species would consider insane. But we also have something that your records of previous Deathworld species seem to have missed. The display showed images of human rescue operations, disaster relief efforts, and peacekeeping missions throughout human space. We have a moral compass that compels us to protect those who cannot protect themselves. We don't just survive, we help others survive too. Dr. Nancy Foster, a Zinub psychologist who had spent years studying the differences between human and alien psychology, stepped forward to provide her analysis. "The Council fears humanity because you judge us by the standards of your own peaceful evolution," she said. "You see our adaptability as chaos, our risk-taking as recklessness, our pack bonding as a threat to your careful balance of power." She brought up detailed psychological profiles comparing human behavior to that of other Council species. "What you call recklessness, we call calculated risk assessment. Humans don't take foolish chances. We evaluate the potential costs and benefits of our actions and act accordingly. The difference is that we're willing to accept higher casualty rates if the goal is worthwhile enough." The chamber fell silent as Dr. Foster's words sank in. Many Council species had assumed that human behavior was driven by emotion or instinct, not realizing that it was actually based on sophisticated decision-making processes evolved for survival. In hostile environments, Ambassador Martinez rose to address the Council with the diplomatic skills that had carried him through the recent crisis. "Honored representatives, I propose that we move beyond fear and toward understanding. Humanity does not seek to dominate or control galactic civilization. We seek to contribute to it in the ways we can." He gestured toward the human delegation and the mixed group of human and alien personnel who had worked together during the recent emergency. "The crisis that brought us here demonstrated something important. When humans and Council species work together, we can accomplish things that neither could manage alone. Our different evolutionary backgrounds don't have to be a source of conflict. They can be a source of strength." Elder Silthara considered the human words carefully before responding. "Your species has indeed demonstrated capabilities that we find both admirable and terrifying. The question remains, how do we integrate a species of apex predators into a civilization built on peaceful cooperation?" The answer came from an unexpected source. Pliktar, the Council Rescue Coordinator, who had witnessed the human rescue operation on Thermios, requested permission to speak. His insectoid form clicked nervously as he addressed the chamber. "I have seen humans accomplish the impossible," he said. "They rescued thousands of beings from conditions that our best teams declared hopeless. But what impressed me most was not their capabilities, it was their attitude. They treated the rescue not as a heroic gesture, but as a job that needed to be done." He activated a recording from the Thermios operation showing humans working in the volcanic hellscape. "Look at how they work together. Look at how they share resources and support each other. Look at how they risk their lives for people they had never met. These are not the behaviors of conquerors or destroyers. These are the behaviors of protectors." The chamber erupted in discussion as representatives debated Kliktar's observations. Some argued that human protective instincts could be just as dangerous as aggressive ones, while others suggested that those same instincts might be exactly what the galaxy needed. General White seized the moment to make her proposal. The Council has maintained peace through careful control and the avoidance of challenges. But there are problems in the galaxy that cannot be solved through careful management. There are crises that require someone willing to attempt the impossible. She brought up data about various ongoing galactic problems, dead systems that needed to be reclaimed, hostile environments that needed to be explored, disasters that required rescue operations beyond normal capabilities. Humanity offers to serve. As the Council's specialists for impossible situations, we'll be the ones who go where others cannot go and do what others cannot do. Dr. Foster added her support to the proposal. This arrangement would allow humanity to contribute our unique capabilities while addressing the Council's concerns about our disruptive potential. We would be channeling our dangerous traits toward constructive purposes under Council oversight. Elder Silthara conferred with her advisors for several minutes before responding. The chamber waited in tense silence as the fate of humanity hung in the balance. Finally, she stood and addressed both the Council and the human delegation. The Council accepts humanity's proposal for provisional membership with specialized responsibilities, she announced. You will serve as our response team for situations deemed too dangerous or impossible for conventional approaches. This arrangement will be reviewed annually based on your performance and integration with existing Council structures. Captain Bill Crawford, who had been chosen to command the first human Council ship, stepped forward to accept the responsibility. The UC-Zeus Harmony's Edge stands ready to serve, he said formally. Our mixed crew of humans and Council species will demonstrate that cooperation is possible between different evolutionary approaches. As the session concluded, representatives from various species approached the human delegation with mixtures of curiosity, caution, and cautious optimism. The fear was still there, but it was beginning to be tempered by understanding and even respect. Later that day, the Harmony's Edge departed on its first mission to a system that had been declared unreachable due to dangerous gravitational anomalies and radiation fields. As Captain Crawford guided his ship into the hazardous region, his alien crew members watched with fascination and terror as the humans treated the lethal environment as simply another challenging workplace. Captain, asked his Velteran science officer, do you truly not fear death? Crawford considered the question carefully before answering. We fear death as much as any intelligent being, he said. But we fear failure to act more than we fear the consequences of action. Sometimes the universe presents problems that require someone willing to take unreasonable risks for reasonable goals. The Harmony's Edge disappeared into the dangerous nebula.